Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and this is 10 cards you should be putting in your Commander decks, episode 44. And we're starting out this week with Master Thief, 2 blue, Human Rogue, 2/2. When Master Thief enters the battlefield, gain control of target artifact for as long as you control Master Thief. And I know this card doesn't seem like much, but I saw it in action in a game just a couple of weeks ago with one of my patrons, and it's really great at stealing boots in particular, right? Because you can steal someone's Lightning Greaves, for example, and then immediately equip it on your Master Thief, and then of course your Master Thief becomes really hard to get off the table. And if you happen to be in a mono blue Dimir deck, one of those color combinations that doesn't deal with artifacts very well, this is definitely an option for that. Coming in at number 2, Measure of Wickedness, 3 and a black enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Measure of Wickedness and you lose 8 life. Whenever another card is put into your graveyard from anywhere, target opponent gains control of Measure of Wickedness. So this is just one of those, I think, sort of fun cards that you could put in a deck, in really any deck. I think you can manipulate it a little bit, but in a commander game, it's just kind of fun because it becomes a game of hot potato, right? Obviously, at the beginning of your end step, you're going to sacrifice it and you'll lose 8 life, so you don't want to be holding on to it when your end step hits, so you got to get rid of it. So you're going to play this, and then you're immediately going to want something to go into your graveyard from anywhere. It's got to be a card, though. It can't be like I sack a treasure token or something like that, so you have to be prepared for that. 8 life is significant. Even when you got 40 life, 8 life can be pretty significant, so I don't think people are going to want to lose that life. Coming in at number 3 is Miles Aria, red, green, and a white enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control if you control a creature with power 5 or greater. So first of all, if we just think about that, controlling a creature with power 5 or greater, that's not that difficult. I mean, if your commander's power 5 or greater, it's going to be pretty easy to get this trigger, and you're going to get a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. That's pretty darn good. However, then you gain 10 life if you control a creature with power 10 or greater. That's pretty darn good. But even better, then you win the game if you control a creature with power 20 or greater. That's right, this is an alt win con in Commander, and one that I never see anybody use. I think it's particularly good in a deck like a Zakama deck where you already have a really big creature. You're guaranteed to have one. You put this down and you cast your commander, or I guess maybe you cast your commander, your lands on tap, then you can play this. And at the beginning of your next upkeep, this all sort of goes in order. You put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. If you control a creature with power 5 or greater, which you will because Zakama is a 9/9, then after you put the counter on it, if you control a creature with power 10 or greater, you will, because you have your Zakama, which is now a 10/10, right? It's going to check the power after the counters are put on, so you're immediately going to gain the 10 life as well. So in a Zakama deck, this is 3 mana, I put a counter on my commander and then gain 10 life. That alone, I think, is pretty good, but then of course, you keep putting the counters on your commander every single turn, and maybe you can actually get up to the 20 and win the game with it. Where I think it fits the absolute best, though, is in a Jared Carthelian deck, where it is currently in only 9% of Jared Carthelian decks on EDH Rec, which I find shocking because I just think it's such a perfect fit there, right? If damage would be dealt to Jared Carthelian while you're the Monarch, prevent that damage and put that many +1/+1 counters on it, right? So he's going to be piling counters on himself, and I think it's even more likely than in a Zakama deck that you can get to that 20 power with your Jared, right? You cast a Blasphemous Act, that's 16 right out of the gate. So this can be a very easy win con for you, I think, in a Jared Carthelian deck. I think it's a great fit there. Coming in at number 4, and this is a really interesting one, Mission the Mind Cage, 4 blue, legendary enchantment. All creatures get -X/-0, where X is the number of cards in your hand. This is just a static effect. If you got 7 cards in your hand, all creatures will get -7 -0, which is going to be basically the best pillow fort effect you could probably get your hands on. Only creatures with a greater than 7 power are going to be doing any damage at all. Even if you're not in a, hand size matters type of strategy, which I think this can be good in that strategy, but also in any sort of pillow fort strategy. I know it costs 7, but this can completely shut off attacking entirely. Even if you only have 5 cards in your hand, all creatures getting -5 -0, not a lot of creatures are going to be able to do any significant damage at all. And if you really want to go all out with this, you can do a little bit of a switch power and toughness sort of a scenario, because there are a few effects like that out there where you can now use this to kill your opponent's creatures by switching their power and toughness. That's an interesting way to use it as well. Coming in at number 5 is Meltdown, and this is really one of my personal favorites. X and a red sorcery, destroy each artifact with mana value X or less. So this is a card that I started using a while ago, probably 3-4 years ago. I started using this because I thought, hey, I pay 2 mana, I can kill all the soul rings, all the mana crypts, all those cheap mana rocks. You know, if you happen to be in a play group where your opponents like to play lots of that stuff, your pod likes to play lots of Mox Diamonds, Mox Opals, whatever the case may be, this can be 1 mana, kill all of those, or 2 mana if you want to include the soul rings, or 3 mana if you want to include all the arcane signets and all that other good stuff. But again, and it seems like almost every episode I do now lately, I touch on this whole treasure token, clue tokens sort of scenario, right? Again, this is another scenario where I can just pay 1 red mana and destroy all the treasure tokens, all the clue tokens, all the food tokens, all the blood tokens, all gone with 1 single mana. I think that's pretty fantastic. This card should definitely see more play. Coming in at number 6, Medusas Vampire. 4 black vampire, 3/4 with flying. Each creature you control is a vampire in addition to its other types, and has, whenever this creature deals damage to a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's a very powerful ability. I mean, I know this guy costs 6 mana, but that is an incredible ability that you can imbue on all of your other creatures. I mean, if you're in a deck where you want your creatures to be vampires, obviously that's a great fit. Maybe in the new Olivia deck, this could be a good fit where you want that legendary vampire to be on the battlefield. So if you have a legendary creature at all, now it's going to be a legendary vampire because it's a vampire as well. So maybe it fits there. That other part though, whenever this creature deals damage, put a +1/+1 counter on it. That also can be pretty fantastic if you just have a commander that you want to be putting +1/+1 counters on it, right? There's lots of commanders out there that are going to be dealing damage. You don't care about the vampire part. They're going to be dealing damage. Your opponents are probably going to be wanting throwing creatures in the way. And if they do, now they're just going to get even more counters on them. So it's sort of like a lose-lose for your opponents. So it could be a good fit there as well. Coming in at number 7, very old, very interesting card, Metamorphosis. 1 green mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature. Add X mana of any 1 color where X is 1 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. Spend this only to cast creature spells. So this is a ritual effect in green. That's right. Who thought green had ritual effects like this? If you're in a situation where maybe you want to sacrifice your creatures, so you're in a maybe Golgari sacrifice theme, this could work. I think more the case though, this is just, think of it like an Eldritch Evolution, right? Except instead of I go get that more expensive creature out of my library, I just cast that more expensive creature out of my hand, right? That's sort of where I'm thinking this could be great in a mono green deck where I cast an Eternal Witness, I get the effect that I want out of it, then I pay 1 green mana, sacrifice my Eternal Witness, I'm going to add 1 plus the sacrifice creature's mana value. So I'm going to get 4 mana. So now I can cast a 6-7 mana creature pretty easily. I really think this card could probably go in a ton of decks, if at the very least just to assist in casting your own commander, right? And while we're on the theme of sacrificing in not typical sacrifice colors, Mercy Killing coming in at number 8, 2 and a hybrid white-green mana instant. Target creature's controller sacrifices it, then creates X 1/1 green and white elf warrior creature tokens where X is that creature's power. So this is just such a unique and interesting card with just a plethora of ways to use it, I think. And I'm sure everyone right now who hasn't seen this card before is thinking, hey, I could use it for this, I could use it for that. Obviously, target creature's controller means you can use it on your opponents, or you can use it on yourself. So I can use this on my opponent if they have a really troublesome creature, like they got an Elesh Norn in play. I can make them sacrifice that Elesh Norn, right? This becomes a removal spell. They get 4 1/1 tokens. So what? Got the Elesh Norn off the table. I'm totally okay with that. But also, I can use this on my creature. And I really like the effects that, like Momentous Fall is one of my favorite cards where someone's board wiping, I'm going to lose my creature anyway. Why not sacrifice it to get some value? Now, obviously, with Mercy Killing in the board wipe scenario, that's not going to work because creating those tokens, they'll just die to the board wipe anyway. But targeted removal, right? My opponent is about to spot removal my commander. Why not sacrifice it and get a whole bunch of tokens in replacement, or maybe you just want to set it up that way, right? When I saw this card, I instantly put it in my Shanna deck. I can't believe I didn't have it in there before. Even if your Shanna deck isn't doing the same thing my Shanna deck is, which is I am sacrificing my commander to make more tokens. I already have Feed the Pack in there already because I want to sacrifice my commander, create more tokens so that the next time I cast it, I get even more tokens. This is just an absolute perfect fit in there. But even if you're in any Shanna deck, I think it's a great fit. And if you're in any token theme, it might be a great fit as well. I think it fits in a lot of different themes, but ultimately I just love the versatility. I think you could put this in any white-green deck, and maybe there's a troublesome creature my opponent has that I really need to get off the table, and I don't happen to have a swords in my hand, but also I can use it on myself to gain some value. Coming in at number 9, Mind Slash. And this is kind of a nasty one. 1 black enchantment. Pay a black and sacrifice a creature. Target opponents reveals their hand. You choose a card from it. That player discards that card. Activate only as a sorcery. Obviously, this fits fantastically in a discard theme, and there's lots of decks out there that want to be doing that. It also fits in just, I'm in an Aristocrats theme. I'm in a theme where I want to be sacrificing my creatures, or maybe I'm in like a Nadir deck where I'm creating lots of tokens, and I have those tokens that I can use for other things. Even if I don't necessarily want to be sacrificing them, a 1/1 elf token is not hugely impactful on a commander game, but looking at my opponent's hand and choosing their best card and getting rid of it, that is incredibly impactful, obviously. I mean, you can literally just put this in any deck and have, your opponent tutors for that combo piece or that important thing that they really want badly. Even if you don't know what it is, now on your turn, you can sacrifice a creature, even in desperation, just to look at their hand to see what they went and got, and then make them discard it. I used to see this card quite a bit back in the day in Nath of the Gilt Leaf decks, where it is particularly nasty, and that commander is kind of nasty, doesn't get played nearly as much anymore. But of course, it's a great combo with Nath, where whenever an opponent discards a card, you may create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token, which then you can just repeat the process, right? For every 1 black mana you have, you can pick a card out of an opponent's hand. So it's a phenomenal fit there if you don't already have it in your Nath of the Gilt Leaf deck. Coming in at number 10 this week is Minions Murmurs. 2 black sorcery. You draw X cards and you lose X life, where X is the number of creatures you control. I think I just had someone in the last 10 cards video, or very recently, give this card a mention. Hey, what about this card? And sure enough, here I am in this spot in the alphabet. So I am definitely giving it a mention. I think it's a pretty good draw card, no question. There's a lot of, and I'm going to make a video pretty soon about my take on card draw. I'm going to talk about Stinging Study in my top cards of the year list. I don't mind paying 5 mana if I'm going to get a handful of cards out of it. And I don't mind paying 4 mana if I'm going to get a handful of cards out of it, right? A lot of people like Knight's Whisper and Sign in Blood. For me, those are too low impact. I know they only cost 2 mana, but you're only getting 2 cards, right? And one of them replaces the one you just cast. If I'm going to cast a spell, it's a one-shot. I want to get at least 4 cards out of it. That, for me, that is the minimum. And of course, with this, you just have to have 4 creatures on the battlefield. In that Nadir deck, or that deck where you're gonna have lots of creatures on the battlefield, this is just fantastic. I mean, it is conditional, right? You do have to have the creatures. I think if you had 3, this is worth it, right? If you have 3 creatures, it becomes a harmonize. I guess you lose the 3 life as well. It's not great, but it's still good. But then the sky's the limit after that, right? If you have 7 creatures in play, you're gonna draw a ton of cards off of this. So I think it's definitely worth putting in a deck where you have the possibility of having lots of creatures in play at least, right? But that is it for today. That is 10 more cards you should be putting in your commander decks. And if you are thinking of purchasing any of these cards, I have a TCG Player link. It is in the description. Please give it a click. It helps support the channel. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.